Be the inspiration means to lead by example.
Definitely by living by example. You reap what you sow, and just living by example.
Really, be an inspiration applies to everyone, and everyone can make a difference by doing that.
Any real change that's ever happened in any organization, it starts with the individual, and then they inspire others.
I think be the inspiration means don't wait for somebody else to change your community's life. That's the responsibility of all of us.
What we're doing as a community and philanthropic organization is provide the structure needed to empower the individual to take care of the needs that they feel passionate about within the community.
If you think something should be done, stand up and do it. And the great thing about Rotary is that you've got all these great people to stand up right next to you.
And welcome to the Rotary Club meeting of San Dimas for, what is the day, October 19th, 2022, and I am the president, Raymond Foster. A couple of things before we go around the wheel and see who's here this morning with the spokes. Let's see here. What do we got going on that's really important? Last night, the 2026 committee met, and that was a really good meeting. Lots got done. We had all kinds of people show up, but there's still room for more people at the table. The benefit dinner committee, or benefit dinner, is on November 10th. It is sold out. The program goes into production on Friday, so last chance for sponsorships. The real issue right now is finding a speaker, and we're still a little bit behind the eight ball on that, but I think we're going to be okay. Lastly, there is a committee meeting coming up for the fashion show. That is the fashion show to support domestic violence, the domestic violence shelter House of Ruth. That date has been secured with Life Pacific University for doing the event. And lastly, I'm going to announce now we have a date for the next food drive, which will begin on March 10th, and more information will follow. And that's the actually 29 Palms resupply. Last year we raised 5 tons of food for 29 Palms. We're going to go for, I don't have set a goal yet, but the committee will set a goal, and we're going to just go forward. So you'll hear more information about that. So let's go around the room and see who's with us this morning. Steve, say hello.
Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Scott. I am a State Farm agent in San Dimas. I am the club secretary and the president-elect, and it is great to be here.
Yeah. We have to have club elections and figure out your officers in January, and that's very exciting for me, Steve. I'll tell you that.
I'm sure it is. You have served your time well, sir.
Hey, so I got a question for you, Steve. Tell everybody a little bit about the due dates and stuff going on with, is it TLC coming up?
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Rotary sponsors 2 different youth leadership camps. One is RILA, Rotary Youth Leadership Academy. The other is, and that is for high school juniors, sophomores and juniors. And then there is TLC, Teen Leadership Camp. That is for junior high kids. TLC is coming up at the beginning of December. Applications have to be into the district by November 11th. We have budgeted to send, I believe, 2 kids to each. Although if we have the problem of having more kids, more deserving kids, we may be able to figure out a way to make that happen as well.
Thank you, Steve. And so let's go on next to Glenn Johnson. Say hello, Glenn.
Hello there. This is Glenn Johnson. I'm a member of Satellite Rotary Club, and I've got something to do with the Marine Dinner.
Yeah, he's our chief cook and bottle washer. That's what he's got going on with that. Thank you so much for being here, Glenn. Let's go down to Isabella.
Hi, Isabella Foster. I'm current secretary of the Satellite Rotary Club.
Awesome. All right. And so after the meeting, can you hang on a little bit and talk to me?
Yep.
Okay, good. And so, Sean, you're fast becoming a friend of Rotary. Sean, introduce yourself.
My name is Sean Casares. I'm a resident of San Dimas and a senior citizen commissioner for the city of San Dimas.
Thank you so much for being here. Mike Wallace has popped in. He is connecting to audio, but it's worth waiting for Mike. Hey, Mike, say hello to everybody. Oh, Mike.
Hello. Sorry about that. I am working out the kinks here. Start video. There we go. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Wallace. I'm the president of Better Home Financial, a mortgage brokerage here in downtown San Dimas. been a Rotarian for about 7.5 years. Involved in a lot in the community, and I'm happy to be here serving the community and to see all of you.
Excellent. As people come in, we'll reintroduce them after the speaker, but let's get started because Roger's time is important and his subject is fascinating. Roger Breisch holds a Master's of Science in Mathematics from Northern Illinois University and a Master of Science in Management from the Sloan School at MIT. During his career, he taught high school, was a manager for a Fortune 100 company, owned a management consulting company, and ran a local chamber of commerce. During his professional career, Roger volunteered extensively. He chaired the local 4th of July fireworks celebration for 17 years, worked with teens in an anti-alcohol, anti-drug program for 15 years, and has spent more than 4,000 hours answering calls on a suicide hotline over the past 19 years. Roger speaks and writes extensively. He has spoken at TEDx IT, TEDx Quincy, and TEDx Quincy Studio. He has published 2 books, a collection of essays in Questions That Matter, and his thoughts about the future aspects of the species Homo sapiens, and his latest book, Humanity's Journey Home. Today, Roger focuses on helping others discover a life that matters. He and Judy, his wife of 40 years, have 2 grown children and live in Batavia, Illinois. Welcome to the Rotary Club of San Dimas, Roger. You gotta unmute yourself, brother.
I do. Thank you. I appreciate it. So what I'd like to begin with is my 6.5 minute remarks at TEDx Quincy Studio, which will give you an introduction, good introduction. I hope you can all see that at this point. So one afternoon, I answered a call on the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline from a young man who was a senior in high school. It's likely one of 11 or 12,000 phone calls that I've taken on the Lifeline over the past 19 years. It is a privilege to help thousands of people find their way forward from some of the darkest moments of their lives. This young man, this senior in high school, when he was in junior high school, he dug himself into this incredible hole, and almost anything you want to put in that hole was there with him. Drugs, alcohol, skipping classes, poor grades, bad influences in his life. Sophomore year in high school, he decided that's not who he wanted to be. So he literally clawed his way out of that hole. He got off the drugs and the alcohol. He got the bad influences out of his life. He went back to class and for 2 years compiled a really solid academic record. And now talking to me, he's applying to colleges, hoping to get into a pretty good school. So I want to pause this story of determination and grit for just a moment and share with you an activity that I've done with thousands of people over the last 10 years. I asked them to look at this slide, these 40 or so words, descriptive words, both positive and negative, and I asked people to pick 2 or 3, maybe 4 words from this list that they would use to describe themselves. And to give people a few moments to do that. And after they have, I've said, now think of somebody in your life, a truth teller, I call them, somebody who knows you and cares about you, somebody who's a positive influence in your life, and think of that person and imagine 2 or 3 or 4 words that they would choose from this list. And after a moment or two, I ask a very simple question. How many people have 2 different lists? Everywhere I go, no matter the demographics, the age, the geography, it doesn't matter, the results are the same. 75 to 100% of the people say, yes, I have 2 different lists to describe myself as a human being. Isn't that interesting? Why so pervasive? The reasons are actually many, but one of the most common and one of the most perverse is because of these words here, the negative descriptors, the ones that I call words in red. People everywhere, because they're still focused on mistakes they made and failures in their life, sometimes from years earlier, the words in red populate and infiltrate their self-description. And the story they're telling themselves becomes inaccurate and incomplete. The people who know us and love us, those people understand that we make mistakes. They can tell us a more accurate picture of who we are. The words in red seldom populate their self-description. I ask people all the time, have you beat yourself up in a way that you know is unfair? And so many people say, yes, I do that all the time. I ask people, have you said things to yourself that you would never say to another human being? And people say, yes, I have done that too. So let's return to this young man in high school and his determination and his grit. Imagine, if you will, the words that were occurring to me to describe this young man as we talked. And because he was still so focused on his failures and mistakes in junior high school, what words do you suppose he was using to describe himself? Words in red. This partially describes why he was calling me that afternoon on the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. As I tried to help this young man understand why his story was inaccurate and incomplete, at one point I paused in our conversation and I said to him, I love you, young man. I love who you are, and I love who you are becoming. And in that moment, that 18-year-old senior in high school began to cry. Why? I asked him, why the tears? He said to me, he paused and he said quietly, he said, it's not because I'm sad. It's because you're the first person I can recall who ever said to me, I love you. It broke my heart. There was a 14th century Persian mystic by the name of Hafiz who once said, I wish I could show you, when you are lonely and in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. What a joy it has been for me these past 19 years to help thousands of people see even fragments, little bits and pieces of the astonishing light I can see in them. And so in those moments when we are lonely and in darkness, when words in red begin to populate and infiltrate our self-description, it's time to realize that that story that you're telling yourself is inaccurate and incomplete. Find that truth teller, that person who knows you and cares about you. Go to them and tell them that you're not okay, because it's okay not to be okay. Find that person who will look you in the eye and say, I love you. I love who you are. And I love who you are becoming. Find that person who will help you see the astonishing light that they see in you. And then there's just one simple thing left to do. Dig deep. Dig really deep. And find the courage to believe them. Thank you. So 19 years, 4,000 hours, 11 or 12,000 phone calls that I've answered on the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It never astounds me how often the people who call see themselves in a way that is so much less than who they really are. I could tell you hundreds, perhaps thousands of stories along those lines. The question is, how does that happen? Why is it when I go to audiences? I was at Nazareth Academy this morning. I talked to 700 students. And when I asked them to do that exercise, to pick words they would use to describe themselves and words that other people use to describe them, and how many people have two different lists, and most of the hands, these are all high school students, freshmen to seniors, went up. How does that happen? Well, let me share one other screen here for you. Let's take a look at Sam. I assume you can all see that at this point. Let's take a look at Sam. If you go back to the video, these are the words that Sam used to describe himself, focusing on his mistakes when he was in junior high school. And these are the words that I used to describe him because of his incredible grit and determination once he got to be a sophomore in high school. How does that happen? How do we end up with two completely different descriptions of the same human being? Well, I like to say that it's because of the human brain. The human brain is extraordinary. The human brain is easily fooled. And it's easily fooled in the following way. If I asked you, this is Caniza's triangle, it was drawn in, I think, 1958 by an Italian by the name of Gaetano Caniza. Two triangles, which one is larger? Most people would say, well, the green triangle and white triangle are the same size. And then what I do is I illustrate the fact that there aren't any triangles in that picture. Gaetano Caniza found a way in 1958 to arrange those independent shapes in a way to fool your brain into seeing triangles that aren't there. It's called pattern making. The human brain does that hundreds of times every day. We take little bits and pieces. Your brain can't take in everything. Even right now, just looking at this screen, you can't take in all of the information your brain is bombarded with. So you have to pick little bits and pieces. We do that constantly every day. We take little bits and pieces about ourselves, about other people, and about our environment. We use those little pieces to tell us stories, and we see triangles when there aren't any. My wife and I were in a resort a number of years ago, and over the outside the lobby was a little shop, and over the door was this sign that says Cafe Lounge. In fact, there isn't an F in there at all. It's steam that the graphic designer made to look like an F. And it looks like it's coming from a coffee cup, and there's not a coffee cup there either. Your brain will make up stories based upon little bits and pieces of information, but it's just not graphic images. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. We do that about ourselves, and we do that about other people. So let's go back to Sam. The two views of Sam, his and mine. How does that happen? Well, it's pattern making. He's taking little bits and pieces of his life and using them to tell his story. And I'm taking bits and pieces of his life and telling a very different story. What are the bits and pieces he's using? His poor grades. This is all back to junior high school. His drugs, the bad influences, skipping classes, his shame, his failures, his feelings of worthlessness. And he's using that to say, that's who I am. And it's not who he is. How about me listening to him on the phone? I know all of those things are there because he told me. But the bits and pieces I'm taking from his life are his determination, his honesty, his vision, integrity, his success, his hard work, and his future. And I'm using that to describe this young man in a much different way. So that being the case, is it any surprise that his view looks like this and my view looks like that? What's true is because the human brain can't take in everything it experiences, what we know about ourselves, about other people, and about the events of our lives are always based on bits and pieces of the world. And the story that we tell based upon that is always incomplete and usually inaccurate. I love to say, remember this, everything you know about the world, everything you know about the world is incomplete, and much of it is inaccurate and wrong about yourself, about other people, and about the events of our lives. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. My website, I've been lucky enough to give 3 TEDx talks, and the words in red, the one there in the upper right-hand corner, you can download that words in red worksheet from my website, rebreisch.com. I encourage people to do that. Use that worksheet with people, the words in red, and see if people describe themselves differently, especially those who love us and the people that we love. See if they describe themselves differently than we describe them. I think it's a valuable exercise. I've also been lucky enough to write a couple of books. I won't talk about those. Those are on my website as well. But let me just, with that introduction, what I will say is that, again, after 19 years and 11 or 12,000 phone calls on a suicide hotline, what I know is that very few people truly see themselves accurately. And everywhere I go, even this morning at Nazareth Academy, 760 students all said, yes, I see myself differently than the people who know me and love me. So let me stop there and ask if there are some questions. That's the heart. I speak to a number of different high schools. I speak to several thousand students every year, and this is the heart of the message that I give them, that what they see in themselves, especially, I will tell you, students are struggling. It's a very, very difficult time to be a student. It was hard when I was a kid, but now with social media and cell phones and texting, I think it's much harder to be a teenager today. And as we know, suicide is epidemic in almost all demographics, but it's certainly epidemic amongst young people between the ages of 12 and 25. So let me pause there and ask, what questions have you got about this message here and about the work that I've done on the suicide hotline? How can I be of service to all of you in this call?
Well, you know what, I would like to open it up to questions, and I'll do so, but if we have time, a couple people came in late, and I would really love to replay that video because that was very powerful. But let's go ahead and have a couple of questions and then maybe circle back just to see that one more time.
So Roger, first of all, thank you. That was fantastic. Thank you for the work that you do with students. That's even more fantastic. I immediately went to Redwords for myself. And so obviously in a suicide hotline conversation, I'm assuming that there's not a lot of follow-up, but for somebody who does see those red words first, is there an exercise that you would recommend for that individual, aside from talking to somebody who will be a truth teller, but something you can work on for yourself?
Well, that can be very difficult because we're in denial, especially if the story we're telling ourselves is a negative story. At the very end of the TED Talk, what I said was, what you need to do after you've talked to that truth teller and they tell you what they see in you is dig deep and find the courage to believe them. Because what happens so often, especially with the people who love us, you know, I could go to my wife. She has to say that, right? She's my wife. My mother passed away. I can't go to her, but I go to any of my loved ones. And that voice of denial pops up that says they're just being polite. They don't really mean that. And so it becomes very difficult. So Steve, in answer to your question, what I would say is you have to listen to the messages we get from the world. The community tells us who we are because we don't know. But we have to listen to those messages that we get with an open mind. When somebody says something to us, you know what you did there was very kind, was very generous. I see you as a very wise, kind individual. To understand that there is some truth to what they're saying and find the courage to believe that. So Steve, I don't know if that helps, but we need really to listen to the messages from the community because the community sees us as we show up. We can't see that.
Okay.
Even in the Rotary Club, my guess is that each of you, if you honestly describe the other members of the club that you know, they would be surprised by the positive things you would say about them. And some of them would be in denial that, oh, you're just being polite because you're a fellow Rotarian, you have to say that. And generally that's not true. Sorry, long answer, Steve, but it's a great
Appreciate
question.
that.
Do we have other questions? So a couple of things. The first is working that suicide hotline. And I'm going to imagine that's all hours. That's not, you're not working that Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That's got to be late hours. And how do you, as a human being, decompress? How do you file that in your mind so that, you don't warp your perception of what's going on? How do you work with it?
So as a volunteer, because there are people who do this full time and I can't. As a volunteer, I'm there 4 hours a week. So that helps me. But I will tell you that when I close the door after my 4-hour shift, my feeling more than anything else is gratitude. Is it stressful? Is it frightening? One of the very first calls 19 years ago that I got was a young man who said, I have a gun in my lap. When we're done talking, I intend to use it. So it's stressful and it's frightening sometimes. But so many people of the 11,000 phone calls leave the conversation by saying thank you. One young woman said to me not too long ago that before I called, I felt like going home tonight and self-harming. And now that you and I have talked, and you've helped me see something in myself that I wasn't able to see, I don't feel like going home and self-harming. So the gratitude that I feel is very helpful in overcoming the stress and the tension of the calls, and the fact that Lots of people are living incredibly, incredibly difficult lives.
Okay, excellent answer. Other questions coming out of this? Can you cue that TEDx up again for us, Roger? I think that would. I think that a couple guys came in late. I want them to see that.
Well, I'd be happy to do that if if you don't mind being subjected to me once again. Let me. Oh, do you know what? I need to stop this, because when I share it, I need to click on the little button that says, "Oh, share the sound." I did already. Okay, so let me find it again. Let me share that and cue it up back to the beginning. So one afternoon, I answered a call on the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline from a young man who was a senior in high school. It's likely one of 11 or 12,000 phone calls that I've taken on the Lifeline over the past 19 years. It is a privilege to help thousands of people find their way forward from some of the darkest moments of their lives. This young man, this senior in high school, when he was in junior high school, he dug himself into this incredible hole, and almost anything you want to put in that hole was there with him. Drugs, alcohol, skipping classes, poor grades, bad influences in his life. Sophomore year in high school, he decided that's not who he wanted to be. So he literally clawed his way out of that hole. He got off the drugs and the alcohol. He got the bad influences out of his life. He went back to class and for 2 years compiled a really solid academic record. And now, talking to me, he's applying to colleges hoping to get into a pretty good school. So I want to pause this story of determination and grit for just a moment and share with you an activity that I've done with thousands of people over the last 10 years. I asked them to look at this slide, these 40 or so words, descriptive words, both positive and negative, and I asked people to pick 2 or 3, maybe 4 words from this list that they would use to describe themselves, and to give people a few moments to do that. And after they have, I've said, now think of somebody in your life, a truth teller, I call them, somebody who knows you and cares about you, somebody who's a positive influence in your life, and think of that person and imagine 2 or 3 or 4 words that they would choose from this list. And after a moment or two, I ask a very simple question. How many people have 2 different lists? Everywhere I go, no matter the demographics, the age, the geography, it doesn't matter. The results are the same. 75 to 100% of the people say, yes, I have 2 different lists to describe myself as a human being. Isn't that interesting? Why so pervasive? The reasons are actually many, but one of the most common and one of the most perverse is because of these words here, the negative descriptors, the ones that I call words in red. People everywhere, because they're still focused on mistakes they made and failures in their life, sometimes from years earlier, the words in red populate and infiltrate their self-description. And the story they're telling themselves becomes inaccurate and incomplete. The people who know us and love us, those people understand that we make mistakes. They can tell us a more accurate picture of who we are. The words in red seldom populate their self-description. I ask people all the time, have you beat yourself up in a way that you know is unfair? And so many people say, yes, I do that all the time. I ask people, have you said things to yourself that you would never say to another human being? And people say, yes, I have done that too. So let's return to this young man in high school and his determination and his grit. Imagine, if you will, the words that were occurring to me to describe this young man as we talked. And because he was still so focused on his failures and mistakes in junior high school, what words do you suppose he was using to describe himself? words in red. This partially describes why he was calling me that afternoon on the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. As I tried to help this young man understand why his story was inaccurate and incomplete, at one point I paused in our conversation and I said to him, "I love you, young man. I love who you are, and I love who you are becoming." And in that moment, that 18-year-old senior in high school began to cry. "Why?" I asked him. "Why the tears?" He said to me, he paused and he said quietly, he said, "It's not because I'm sad. It's because you're the first person I can recall who ever said to me, 'I love you.'" It broke my heart. There was a 14th century Persian mystic by the name of Hafiz who once said, "I wish I could show you, when you are lonely and in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being." What a joy it has been for me these past 19 years to help thousands of people see even fragments, little bits and pieces of the astonishing light I can see in them. So in those moments when we are lonely and in darkness, when words in red begin to populate and infiltrate our self-description, it's time to realize that that story that you're telling yourself is inaccurate and incomplete. Find that truth teller, that person who knows you and cares about you. Go to them and tell them that you're not okay, because it's okay not to be okay. Find that person who will look you in the eye and say, "I love you. I love who you are. And I love who you are becoming." Find that person who will help you see the astonishing light that they see in you. And then there's just one simple thing left to do. Dig deep. Dig really deep. And find the courage to believe them. Thank you.
Can't go wrong watching that twice. I'd like to throw that open for questions again as we go back. Otherwise, I'm going to ask questions. Casey, you unmuted yourself. I know you got a question, brother.
Of course. Sorry, I had some Wi-Fi issues, so I got bounced and couldn't get in, but I'm here now, and thanks for replaying the video. Roger, my question for you is, I know as individuals that you drop in, you do a talk, you talk to the students. Are you open? Are you interested? Have you ever been in one place long enough to see the culture shift? How can we partner with you with our local school district? I'm a part of the Education Foundation. I'm an advocate for wellness. I wholeheartedly believe in exactly what you just said. I'm looking at the culture shift rather than the one-time awareness. Just give me some thoughts back on that. How do we help the educational system recognize that systemically we got to do it different? That's a big question.
That is a terribly big question. You know, it breaks my heart that even the schools that I go into, you talk about its culture shift, they still lose students to suicide. You know, you like to think that you go in and you've really solved the problem. I've given this a similar talk to this. This TEDx remarks is really only about 4 or 5 months old. I've been giving a similar talk for 6 or 7 years, but I never had the video and I never had that worksheet that I now pass out to students. And several of the teachers have said what they really love is the way this is now presented is the phrase "words in red" has become very meaningful to students. They can just use that phrase and immediately the students know what they're talking about. Yeah, I'm beating myself up in a way that I shouldn't. I'm using words in red to describe myself, and maybe that's unfair. So is it the be all? It's not. Culture shift, you know, can we get rid of social media? I mean, one of the points of the talk is that we take little bits and pieces of the world and we use them to tell stories. I got a call just the other day on a suicide hotline from a young woman who's 22 in a successful relationship, in a career. She's not crazy about the career, but it's successful and she's doing a good job at it. And yet she's thinking about suicide because, well, all of my friends in college are graduated and they have families and careers that they love, and little bits and pieces that she's seeing of all of the other people on social media. And she's telling herself stories that are inaccurate and incomplete about other people. Social media is wonderful in so many ways. Don't get me wrong. I'm connected with high school classmates of mine that I lost touch with, and that's wonderful in so many ways. But it's also so destructive when we use it to tell stories of other people that are inaccurate and incomplete, and we always show up something less. So I don't know what we do about that. Except to help students understand that, you know, the one slide that I had in my talk is that remember that everything that you know about the world, everything you know about the world is based upon little bits and pieces of it. And much of it is inaccurate and wrong. But we tend to think that's what up here in our brain is accurate and complete. And it's just not. It's just not. I don't think I've answered your question, Casey, because it's, as you said, it's a great big question.
And a part of what I'm proposing, Roger, is we are blessed as the Rotary to bring in wonderful speakers, and Raymond, you have just a gift and a niche at it. But too often they come in and they talk to us, and we go, yeah, but we're not turning around and living this out and giving it away enough. I wonder, okay, if we brought you back 6 more times, do you think you could infect us enough that we could turn around and give it away? I mean, it's not a question. It's just, as your wheels spin on that, I want our wheels in the Rotary to spin on that, and go, what is it, if we really like that, how do we get that out there and that message more? You know, do we just bring you in and is it a one-time gig, but it's not, it's got to be a cultural engagement. So musing out loud with you. Thank you.
No, I had, there was a group of about 8 high schools in upper New York State that brought me in. I spent a week traveling upper New York State, and I visited 8 schools, and I talked to their entire student body. Now that again is a little bit of, you know, in and out, and does it really change the culture? I don't know. But I do like the fact that this TEDx video is out there. It's short, it's 6.5 minutes. It's on my website. It's easy to find. And that worksheet is easily downloadable. And so I'm hopeful that just that phrase, words in red, can help schools rally around just this idea that whenever we're beating ourselves up, it's inaccurate, it's incomplete, and it's unfair. We say things to ourselves we would never say to another human being, and we just need to remind each other. I love also to speak to senior communities, because I think that another one of the problems is we've ripped the elders, if you will, from the lives of our young people. We've put them in retirement communities, and I say this only partially tongue-in-cheek. We give them a golf club and say, don't call us, we'll call you. I go into retirement communities and people say, one woman said to me, you know, I love it here and I've got friends and I'm well cared for, but now that my family knows that, they don't come and see me anymore. I had one elderly gentleman said, you know, when I was younger, I've thought a lot about suicide and I've written a lot about that. I said, have you shared that with your family? Have you shared that with your grandchildren? And he said, why would I want to burden them with my problems? I said, because they need to know. They need to know that Grandpa, who lives in this beautiful retirement community, didn't skip through life without any difficulties. Life is hard, but it's survivable. One of my other TED Talks is called Affirming Life, Finding Joy and Wisdom on the Other Side of Sorrow. It is one of the greatest places for us to find wisdom is when we're in the depths. But we need to be honest with each other and share that message that yes, life is hard, but we can do it together. And on the other side of the pain and the sorrow and the heartache is joy and tremendous wisdom. Don't know that I've answered your question again, but
I actually think you have. And what I'd like to do, we've got several school board people. We had a school board member. We've got 2 people from the foundation, and all of us are very active in the community. I'd like to have a conversation very shortly, like in the next couple of, 3 or 4 days, talk about Roger's message and see, bringing Roger out is a great idea, and having him speak to first the teachers and then maybe to the students. I would love that idea. If there is some kind of foundational back end where we're going to follow through on it, because you know me, I'm not for going for the expense of something that makes us feel good for 24 hours, but we don't follow through on, because it's a very powerful message. You know, when you were talking, you showed your words in red, you showed your list of words. My first thought, I'm going through the words, I'm reading them all, and everyone knows here, I read everything I'm reading, and I'm thinking, well, I've been all of these things. Which ones am I today? I have been, and the second thought, when you got to your triangle thing, and I'm looking, I go, yeah, you know what? My grandfather, who is a World War II veteran, a World War I veteran, he over 100 years ago, that guy fought in the trenches. He told me I was about 8 years old. Don't believe nothing that you hear and only half of what you see. And that stuck with me my entire life. And I'm just wondering if how much of that message is, you know, in 64 years, you're going to be all these things, but you got to circle back and find the ones you want to land on, buddy. So very powerful. Other questions? Otherwise, I have a couple of more actual questions rather than comments.
So Raymond, my other TED Talk, the third one, is called, I forget what it's called now, but it's about how the human brain fools us. So there's more examples in there of how your brain can fool you into thinking things that aren't real. So
Glenn knows, and I've been doing an education program for a Masonic lodge that's dialed in right on what you're talking about the subconscious versus the conscious and how to use both of those. And yeah, absolutely. That's your talk. As Glenn was shaking his head, yeah, I've been doing this for a while. And Casey and I have been having this conversation forever. I got a daughter online who's heard me say a lot of these things. Here's my next question, and I'm going to keep you a few more minutes. You wrote a book, Questions That Matter. Is that the questions that matter? What questions matter?
Oh, you know, that book is actually a collection of essays. So one of the wonderful things about a book of essays is you can start anywhere you want because one doesn't depend on the next one. The difficulty with a book of essays is people say, what's it about? I say, well, it's about a whole lot of different things. What questions matter? You know, any question matters. When I train new people on the suicide hotline, we live in a culture that wants to fix. And so a young woman called me a year ago and said, I hate everything I see about myself in the mirror. I hate everything about my life. Now, if one of her loved ones hears her say that, we would tend to jump into a fixing mode with sentences that end in periods. Oh, but you're so friendly, period. Your friends love you, period. You're so smart, period. You get so many good grades, period. And you know what happens? That voice of denial pops up, and that young woman is saying they're just being polite. They don't know what they're talking about. They're wrong. On the suicide hotline, sentences that end in periods are not only not helpful, they're sometimes violent because they make it sound like I'm not listening. And so your question was, what questions matter? Any question matter instead of a statement. So when that young woman said to me, you know, I hate everything about myself, I said, do you have friends in school? And she said, yeah. I said, what would they tell me about you? She paused and she said, they would tell you that I care about them a lot. Now, she has told me what's wonderful about her. I don't have to say it to her, but it's based upon a question. So does that mean you're generous? I would give anything to anybody if they needed it. It was in my power to give. Are you kind? I try to be kind to everybody, and sometimes I fail. Couldn't those be some of the beautiful things you see in yourself when you look in the mirror? The things she's told me about herself. So I'm skipping over your, what questions matter the most, because I think any question matters if it's a sincere question as opposed to a statement trying to tell another person what they ought to believe. Does that help?
You gave the answer I would probably give, and I'll turn it over to questions, which is that I think questions that help people unravel are the ones that matter. And so that's, and I just gave a talk on this, questions that help people. I agree with you 100%. Hey, who's got a question? I see people popping up. You're all
just as a thought, some questions don't matter so much, like, are you some kind of an idiot?
Well,
not a great question.
I get with that one all the time. So and you know what? I've been an idiot. So okay. Any other questions before we move? Yeah, one of our most engaging speakers, Roger. We sincerely appreciate your time. Go ahead, Mike. I see you unmute yourself, brother.
Yeah, not really a question. Just a couple of comments. First of all, wonderful presentation. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Appreciate it. Yeah, it was absolutely phenomenal. You said something like, well, you know, if you ask our fellow Rotarians, they probably have nothing but positive things. That is certainly not true. Within this group, we would give each other a hard time, but it would be in love and jest.
Of course.
But, yeah, just in the simplest form, you know, your mind tricking you to see things that aren't there or to not see things that are there. You know, in business and in management, I tell people that all the time, in the sense of, you know, if you walk out the door at 5 o'clock and somebody else stays till 6, 6:30, 7 o'clock, you don't see that they're there doing that work. And if you help somebody for 20 minutes out of your day, you feel like you did a lot of their work for them as well. But, you know, if you show up at 6 a.m. and somebody else walks in at 9, they don't see what you did. So I relating that to, you know, to business and management, I always say, you know, you see 150% of the work that you do and maybe 75% of the work that everybody else does.
Agreed. Very good commentary. So let's move, Roger, just hang out there, probably some other question, but I want to move towards the end because we keep this tight for that 1 hour. So when it goes back on television and stuff, it matches this time schedule. Let's go move to the Fine Master. We love having the Fine Master here because he reminds us of how fine we are.
Hey, we are a fine group of individuals that have done a lot of fine things, but fine is not a good word until you put it into action. So we are leaders taking action. Who wants to take action on either finding themselves to own the floor, or they want to find themselves to celebrate something good been going on? Either way, let's know what's going on fine in your life. Who's up first? Find yourself.
Well, I'll lead off with $10, and because Roger said something and Mike said something, but Mike was not being disingenuous. The one thing about the tight nucleus of a group is that if you're full of crap, somebody is going to tell you, and because we don't know, you don't know when you're off the rails, huh, Mike? We had this conversation last night. You don't know when you're off the rails, but I've got these brothers and sisters who will grab me and go, wait a minute here, come over here. Let's talk for a moment. And I know that everyone that's on this call is one of those people. And so I'll find myself for that $10 of diplomatic honesty that we try to have. I'm not the one that you call for the diplomacy, but I will give you the honesty.
All right. Who else wants to find themselves? Come alongside.
I'm going to find
Raymond.
myself $10 simply because the last 10 words Raymond just said was about the truest statement anybody has ever made.
Right there with you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much, Steve.
My pleasure. It's what I love about you most, Raymond. We never have to wonder how you feel.
Steve bet me money that I would respond to an email, which I have not yet responded to, Steve. So I have contained myself.
Is there another Roger involved in that?
No, I'm just trying.
No.
Roger's our friend, man. I
know.
I went the long road. They should send me to the Ukraine. I fix that one. All right. Any other fines? That's Steve and I, $10 I'll make at my expense. Perfect, man.
I'm putting a fine out there of celebration that I did not attend our TLC meeting last night, but I already know that Steve did, and I know Sean was coming along as well. So $5 because I knew that our team would show up, and $5 because I didn't show up. So it's 10 total for me.
Okay.
We do need to have a conversation about that, Casey.
Yes.
I figured we did.
And I'm going to close out the fines. Anybody else? Because I want to wrap out the rest of the meeting. Okay. Briefly about TLC and RILA. Please, Casey, you and Sean need to speak to Steve because, and I know Sean is aware of this, but the 10th of November is the deadline apparently for selecting for the next leadership camp, and we need to get that probably rolling right away.
Absolutely.
Number 2 is teacher mini grant applications went out to the schools, and Holy Name has been contacted. Steve and I will work on McKinley. They went out yesterday. We've already received 2 applications back, so that's really well. But I really need your input on how to do the presentation. I don't want to go back to doing it on Zoom again. I don't necessarily want to have the expense of a big dinner, but I need to find something in the middle that will help. So, send me your thoughts, pull me aside. Let's figure this out. We have a couple of months. Raffle, sell your damn tickets and get your money in. We need to raise a little bit more money. We're probably going to end up netting 5,000 or 6,000 out of this with where it stands. But I need you to sell your tickets. 2026 committee met last night. Great meeting. I know that Glenn was there. Lots of stuff went out. The minutes went out to that. 2026 is the community meeting that we're working on celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence here. Something else that came out of this to put in your buns to think about. 2028, the Olympics and the long bicycle race starts in San Dimas. It's going to start in Benelli Park, go all the way through downtown and up through GMR and down the backside into Baldy Village. This is a huge opportunity for the community. It's a huge opportunity for the Rotary Club. We are an Olympic city. This little town of 37,000 people is going to be mobbed, and I'm just really excited about that. So that came out last night. Put that in the back of your minds because we're kind of early thinkers. I'd like us to get busy on that. Tonight is
I will not be president that year.
Yeah, we need to elect our president for 2028 right now. We do need to think about president-elect for you though, Steve, and then we can do that in January. Satellite Rotary.
I got it covered.
Cool. Satellite Rotary Club meets tonight at High Point Brewery and online. We're going to change a little bit. We're going to use a parliamentary procedure trick to get things going, and that's calling acting as a committee in the whole. And so we're going to take the whole club, and Mike Walsh and I are going to chair the food drive committee together. We've already got a date set and a location for gathering. We're going to get the club moving towards that and see if we can get some cohesion going with them together. I'm going to tell you this again. We're trying to do something, number one, nobody's ever done. And we're trying to fix a problem that nobody's been able to fix. And so there are bumps and there are twists and there are turns, but this is a great journey. And we got to think of it that way. We got to realize we may hit a brick wall and we're going to back up and go another way, but we're doing something that's never been done, right? And second, something that nobody's ever been able to fix. This is a very cool problem. USMC benefit dinner is on November 10th. Tickets are sold out. We had all kinds of politicals coming. The only thing we're missing, damn it, we had a speaker in March. He died. We got another speaker. He's 92 and he's gotten sick and can't go. So we're now looking for a speaker 2.5 weeks before the event. So if you have any ideas, you please help me out on that. 2 last things. Fashion show committee. That was such a smart move at the board meeting, by the way, Steve, by dialing in LPU for a date. We have a date for the fashion show. It'll be at LPU. The proceeds will support the House of Ruth Domestic Violence Shelter. By dialing in the date, it pushed the whole thing forward. So I'm very excited. The next committee meeting is in the calendar, and you're all welcome to come to that. That's going to be an exciting and new event. That's all I have. Does anybody else have anything before I look at the calendar? Roger, go ahead, brother.
Tell me about you guys are doing such great work. Tell me about your raffle.
We have a $10,000 diamond ring that we are raffling. The tickets are $5. And here's the kicker on this. What we've done with this is we've gone out to other nonprofits, other Rotary clubs, and said, if you'll sell our tickets, you can keep $4 of those dollars and give us $1. And so we're a small club, but that's how this $10,000 diamond ring is working out for us.
Okay, so because I love what you guys are all up to, so I want to support that. So would you send me an email? So I'll buy 5 tickets. Send me an email, just tell me where to send the check, and then you can send me the tickets whenever you get the check.
Okay.
We will all send you an email, Roger, and then you can buy 5 tickets from each of us.
Wait, no, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud?
You could. Well, what we ought to do is raffle the person who's going to raffle the spot. Everybody here is tasked with selling at least 100 tickets. Now, Isabella has sold hers. I have sold mine. Glenn has sold his. I believe Steve is buying his.
I just sold 5 right now to Roger.
So
All
let's,
right. Okay, so I'll buy, there's at least, so I'll buy 10. So at least you can each get one. Send me an email, tell me where to send it.
I will work that out for you, Roger. Thank you so much. So let's look at the calendar, moving along here real quick. Hey, our next meeting is on November 2nd. The City of Hope is on pain management nutrition with a physician. And then that night, the High Point Brewery, the Satellite Club, has Major General Peter Gravitt. Peter started out a family of 12, enlisted in the Army, worked his way up to 2-star general. Fantastic story from this gentleman. And then on November 16th, we have Winter Women. This is women in non-traditional employment roles. This is an organization that teaches women to be construction workers primarily. Going to be a great one. And then that night, we'll have High Point Brewery. Ed Turner is going to be talking about the National MIA and POW Memorial. We have a combined club assembly on December 8th. That is our holiday party. I got some suggestions. I need more suggestions. We got to work this out. We're all kind of cheap when it comes to spending money on ourselves. I get that, but we should get together and celebrate. Please send me any ideas that you have so we can get this moving. Our next speaker is on December 14th, and that is Josh Baker. He is the president of the California Enlisted Association of National Guard Enlisted Officers. And then we have on January 4th, Project Cold Case. Now, the Project Cold Case, this guy's father was murdered in Florida and they couldn't figure it out. So he formed a foundation that is now solving hundreds of murders. This is gonna be a fascinating conversation. And lastly, in January 25th, we have Three Angels Haiti, which is an organization that has a school they run in Haiti. They sound like really cool people, and I think that'll be an interesting conversation. So that is our speaker list through just the beginning of the year. If you have ideas for speakers that you would like to have us, don't say you want Roger to come back again. You just send me a message or pull me aside. So last thoughts before we close out the meeting.
Raymond, quickly, this Roger's presentation inspired me on a level that I don't normally get inspired by or to. And I know Casey brought it up. We've done a lot of great things for students in our community. We've done a lot of great things for teachers in our community. So this fits our niche. I'm not asking somebody for answers right now, but I'd like to charge all of us to kind of think about how we can use this message that Roger talked about today to help mental wellness for kids. Because honestly, I think Roger's 100% right. As a spouse of a teacher, this is a tough time for students. And maybe we can do some things that last a little longer and dive a little deeper into kids' souls than just kind of the surface stuff that we've done. As helpful as it has been, I think we can do more along these lines.
Well said. And I'll tell you what, Steve, let's have a cup of coffee or have a Zoom meeting. I see Anthony Porter agrees also. Let's get together, and I don't know when. Let's talk offline so we can wrap this up. I agree 100%. We will not let this drop. Let's see how we can incorporate this into what we do. I agree 100%. And I think everybody else agrees. Raise your hands if you agree with Steve. Thank you very much. All right, folks, that's the Rotary Club meeting for October 19th, 2022. Find out more about us at sandimasrotary.org. Thank you so much, Roger, for a fabulous presentation. Have a great day, everybody.